There are motorcycles that follow the industry. And then there are motorcycles that make you stop and ask, why would Honda do this? Meet the idea of the 2026 Honda CB500, a motorcycle built around one surprisingly old-school ingredient, an air-cooled 501cc engine. At a time when motorcycles are becoming more electronic, more complicated, and increasingly liquid-cooled, Honda going back to simplicity would be a very interesting move. But is this really the return of the classic CB500 spirit? And more importantly, could a simple 500 actually be what modern riders want? Let's take a closer look. The CB500 name carries something important in Honda's history. It represents the idea that you don't need a huge engine to have a serious motorcycle. For decades, Honda's middleweight motorcycles have been successful because they offer something incredibly difficult to achieve: balance. Enough performance to be exciting, enough practicality to ride every day, and enough character to make you want to ride it again tomorrow. That's why a modern CB500 built with a retro philosophy makes sense. Instead of chasing maximum horsepower, the goal would be completely different. Character. A motorcycle that feels mechanical, a motorcycle that sounds mechanical, and a motorcycle that doesn't need to overwhelm you to be enjoyable. Now let's talk about the most interesting part: 501cc and air-cooled. On paper, that sounds almost strange in 2026. Modern manufacturers have spent years improving cooling systems, emissions technology, fuel injection, and engine efficiency. So why would anyone want air cooling again? Because air cooling has one major advantage: simplicity. There is no large radiator dominating the front of the motorcycle, no complicated liquid cooling system taking center stage. Instead, you get an engine where the cooling fins become part of the design. And that matters on a retro motorcycle. Because here, the engine isn't just a machine hidden underneath plastic. The engine is part of the motorcycle's personality. Of course, an air-cooled engine also comes with compromises. Temperature management becomes more important. Emissions regulations become harder to satisfy. And producing strong performance while maintaining reliability requires careful engineering. So if Honda ever brought a motorcycle like this to production, the engineering challenge would be just as interesting as the styling. And visually, this is where the CB500 concept becomes really interesting. Imagine a classic Honda silhouette: a round headlight, a relatively simple fuel tank, a clean tail section, minimal bodywork, and an exposed engine sitting right in the middle of everything. It's a formula that doesn't need to scream for attention. Instead, it relies on proportion. That's something many modern retro motorcycles understand. The best retro designs don't simply copy a motorcycle from 50 years ago. They take the spirit of the original and reinterpret it for today. And that's exactly where a modern CB500 could have an advantage. It wouldn't need to look like an old motorcycle. It would simply need to feel like a Honda from the old school. But here's the important part. Going retro doesn't mean Honda has to abandon modern technology. In fact, this could be the perfect combination. You could have classic styling, combined with modern fuel injection, ABS, LED lighting, digital instrumentation, and modern electronics where they actually make sense. That's the sweet spot. Old school character, modern reliability, modern safety. And this is where Honda could potentially differentiate the CB500 from larger retro motorcycles. You wouldn't necessarily buy it because it's the fastest. You'd buy it because it's easy to live with, easy to ride through the city, comfortable on weekend roads, and visually interesting enough that you still want to turn around and look at it after parking. That's a very different definition of performance. So, who would actually want something like this? Probably not the rider looking for 200 horsepower. And that's exactly the point. The potential audience is much bigger. New riders who want something with personality. Experienced riders who are tired of chasing numbers. Owners who want a simple second motorcycle. And enthusiasts who remember when motorcycles were more about the ride than the specification sheet. A 500cc motorcycle can be fast enough. It can be practical enough. And if the engine has the right character, it can be memorable. But there's one question we still have to ask. Would Honda actually build something like this? That's where we need to separate imagination from confirmed information. A 2026 CB500 with a 501cc air-cooled engine should be viewed carefully unless Honda officially confirms those specifications. But as a concept, the idea makes a lot of sense because motorcycle technology doesn't always have to move in one direction. Sometimes going back is actually moving forward. A simple engine, a classic silhouette, modern safety, and just enough technology to make everyday riding easier. That could be the real appeal of a modern Honda CB500. Not the biggest, not the fastest, not the most complicated, just a motorcycle with character. And honestly, isn't that what motorcycles were always supposed to be about? Let me know in the comments. Would you choose a 501cc air-cooled CB500 over a more powerful modern motorcycle?